Welcome into the Trevor Staub Show, episode number 30. Today we have a very special guest. We've got the now 6-time world champion, Paul McBeth. Thank you for coming in, Paul.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So first question, how does it feel to be a 6-time world champ?
It makes me smile every time I hear it,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's fully sunken in yet. I think once I finally step up to a tee box and they announce that, is when I'll be like,
That's
that
true.
really happened.
That's true. Yeah, I guess you definitely like a lot of players, you hear like their announcements getting up on the tee box and there's not really a lot that have quite the list as you do. It's kind of like the Tiger Woods effect where like they just keep going on and on and on. But yeah, getting that extra one, that I'm sure that definitely makes all the difference. But I kind of wanted to start, going into this event, we're going back to Emporia. Obviously, earlier this year, worst event of your season, a whole different story with the weather. It's not like you were unfamiliar with the courses per se. The Supreme layout is a bit different. But going into the event, you've got this almost confliction where you've got your history with Worlds. It's been 9 years. You're in the top 2 every time. You typically dominate that event. But then you have DDO just from earlier in that year, pale, crazy contrast there. So where was your confidence going into the event?
Well, I feel like for those courses, I learned a lot, by taking whatever place I took. I was there to learn the courses because I knew we were coming back for Worlds. And I wanted to play the courses, not really play the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the big contrast in placing is at DDO, I was playing the course to where everyone else was playing the wind.
Right.
And that's what I should have done. But I wanted to learn the lines, learn the course because I knew it was going to be very similar for Worlds. But I also wanted to make the cut the final day. I was trying to push there at the end at Country Club, but that didn't happen. So I didn't take anything as far as how I finished from DDO.
Yeah.
It was what I learned from those courses.
Just kind of playing a scratch. And it is interesting. You mentioned that like playing the wind versus playing the course. You did see a lot of different shot selection from guys that had success in the wind, and I do wonder if that was a factor. Them having to change their game plan because I imagine like if you're a player like Rick, and not only did you play well, but you won, and you're thinking, now I've got to try and win again with a different strategy. That's probably a pretty difficult mindset to get yourself out of, to be like, well, no, this is a different shot now because the wind's not blowing. What do you think about, the course selection in general? How do you feel about the courses at Emporia and those being chosen for the courses for Worlds?
Well, it's all the bid process. From what I heard, they were the only people to bid for this year's Worlds, so they won.
Yeah.
And then for Vermont, I don't even know if anyone bid, but they may have asked Vermont or they were the only bid, and that's why we're going back there. It's a lot of these places are just winning because no one else is bidding.
Right.
And I don't know if it's that the fundraising or whatever goes into running it, or if they don't feel like their courses are good enough for Worlds to bid.
Yeah.
So, so I don't know. I mean, they're the courses that have been established with DDO and things like that, but obviously a lot of people say we have better courses here, we have better courses there. Until, people start bidding, we're going to be at these places that are the only ones bidding.
Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of talk about, Worlds in general, just the format, where it fits in the scope of disc golf these days because the game has changed so much. And along with that goes the bidding process and course selection and course rotation, because now we're introducing a new major and kind of, it's almost, disc golf has almost started to shift towards, we have 4 majors, not we've got these other majors and then Worlds. What is your opinion on kind of like the future of Worlds and where it fits in disc golf?
Well, I think Worlds is the biggest title of all the majors. A lot of people say, it's got implications that other majors don't have. But I think that's just similar to every like sport, like golf, for example. Everyone wants to win the Masters. Like you get the green jacket. The other majors are big, but like for that's the one so many talk about.
Yeah.
I think it's the same with tennis and with disc golf. Like the Worlds is the one that everyone wants.
Yeah.
Because it is constantly changing. It's different almost every year. You're at a different course, different venue. To where USDGC. What to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have that world-class tournament. You're going to be at Winthrop. The course changes a little bit here and there, but the style of course, and you know what to prepare for.
Mm-hmm.
To where Worlds is kind of a toss up at times.
Yeah. So you almost feel like Worlds, and I never really thought about it that way, but almost the randomness of the course switching around gives it some identity as a major, making it so difficult. Like that's part of it.
Yep.
So another thing, it's obviously a 5-round event. Is that something, what is your preferred format for Worlds? Do you like it having the extra round? Would you prefer if it was just 4, or do you like the days of the final 9?
No, I don't miss the final 9 part.
Okay.
I think honestly, I would love to see all the majors go to 5. These big pro tours be 4, and then maybe Silver Series and A tiers 3.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think 3, 4, 5, because for us, our courses aren't as long as golf.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as much that can happen in those holes.
Right.
Yeah. So I think 5 is awesome for me. I'd love to go to Winthrop for 5 rounds. I'd love to go to European Open and play their 5 rounds. So as I think that's where our sport is, and our courses I don't think are as big as they're going to get, but for what we have now, I think 5 would be awesome.
That is a really good point. I never really thought about that way because, a lot of people just assume 4 rounds is the perfect event. But you're right. There is less opportunity in disc golf just because of the nature of the game. Nobody's going to chunk a chip shot around the green. That doesn't really happen. So that is a good point. Maybe there needs to be more rounds to really give it the right feel, because I do feel like 5 rounds does feel right for disc golf. It does. It looks good, especially on that major platform. There certainly wasn't anything wrong with it. So another thing, kind of as we were getting into Worlds, there's been this narrative going around this year about you having a winning slump, one of the longest of your career. All the time between, there was that stat going around this many days. You won your first, 4 or 5 world titles, and then it's been another that many days since you won your last. There's all these narratives going around. Paul's having a bad season. We probably contributed to half of them, but Paul's doing this, Paul's doing that. Have those narratives really affected you and haunted you at all this season, or do you even really agree with them or give them any credit?
I think, obviously I'm not having a year to my standards,
but
that's what everyone's comparing my year to is
Absolutely.
my standards. If you compare it to every other player, who do you have leading player of the year? Who do you have leading? Yeah. These guys have 3, they got 3 Elite Series wins, but now I have 1 in a major,
right.
Like how do you put that on the scale? So, obviously it's not the year that I want, but it is still a year that's very competitive with everyone right now. And I got the world title.
Well, so. Yeah, you're right. And and that, it's so true. And I was really curious to ask you about this, is like, how is it handling that new standard on tour? Because with all the parity in the field this year, every single weekend there is a group of probably realistically 30 to 40 guys where one of those guys is going to have the best weekend of their season, and they're going to be almost impossible to beat. And winning on tour has just changed. Earlier in your career, it was possible, if you're on your game, you're going to win almost every other event, or you're certainly going to be in the mix. These days, that's just not what winning looks like on tour. Like you mentioned, like this year, just having a major and a pro tour at this stage late in the season makes you a player of the year candidate. How has it been kind of like adjusting your mindset almost as that's progressed, knowing that like, hey, I can't win every single event, but I have to be happy with what the new standard of a dominant season looks like?
Yeah, I feel like this year I've had a chance to win almost every tournament. If I could have just tweaked something here or been a little bit more on here, I feel like I would have had an opportunity to win every tournament except 1 this year. Mm-hmm. The only one that I think no one else was winning was Idlewild, with what Isaac Robinson did. So, I feel like I've been so close, but I just haven't been, there present at all these events. So, and I'm sure a lot of people see, like, I put so much focus into European Open. Like, that was the tournament I was looking forward to. First time back in Europe since COVID, and it's just one of my favorite tournaments. And then the same thing with Worlds, like so much focus on that, because I feel like since COVID, so many things have just been, is it going to happen? Am I going to look forward to this and it not happen? So I think those were the ones that I knew were really going to happen finally, and that's kind of where I put my focus into. So I think this offseason and going into next year, it'll be a lot different. I'll be able to like fully transfer back to how I was pre-COVID, and a little bit more focus into everything. And I don't know, I think it just kind of takes away a lot of that unsureness that I've been having.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uncertainty.
Another one of the big storylines at World was your calf injury. A lot of players and spectators could notice some differences in your throws, that you were favoring it a lot, especially like some of the putts that you were changing up with the straddle and whatnot. How did that injury arise, and then how much did it affect your play?
I don't know what it is about Kansas, or at least there for the Dynamic Disc Open, that I always cramp there every year. So I'm very like on top of it, make sure I don't, lots of water, lots of electrolytes, and just being hydrated and just taking everything I can. So it was the second round, hole 17. My left calf just cramped and just like it happens on the last push off into the shot. So it's like, oh, everything's good. And then just like the last push with the left leg. And then it carried over to 18, which made me yank it right into the tree on the right. And it just lingered. Like it didn't go away. And it just carried over. And like, like typically you get a cramp and then you can like kind of work it out. It's gone an hour or two. But this went into day 3, went into day 4. And then we just like massage gun everything to where it was like, it was purple. Like the whole thing was just purple, trying to get it, fixed. Right. And then finally, so like Julian came Friday and he's like, all right, man, I'm just going to murder your leg. Like, I'm just going to murder it. And he went all in. And it definitely helped for the 5th round. Right. No cramps. But I did notice when I would lower my center of gravity, that's really when just I would have weaker. The issues. Yeah. And and then in putting, it was kind of my push-off leg. So
it was definitely noticeable, something you had to fight through for sure. I mean, it certainly looked noticeable. Like it was not an injury that went unnoticed. Another thing that people were noticing that they saw a lot was the change in your backhand form. Yeah. Something that like you've definitely tinkered a bit with form throughout the year, but this was a major one, getting to Worlds and all of a sudden Paula's left arm is down by his side and it looked just like so different. So the rumor surfaced that this was related to a left shoulder injury, which like I immediately thought that's interesting, but is that true? And then what is the actual reason if not?
Well, I've been having issues with my right shoulder, not necessarily my left shoulder, but so no injury in the left one, but what was happening was I couldn't get the timing down with my left arm to get into that like power pocket. Yeah. So what was happening is I'd go to put my left arm, but it's there too early, so my right arm has to like swing around it. I don't know what's that called, rounding or something like that. Whatever.
That's what they call it, the cool kids.
So
rounding.
So I was like, it's like the day before Worlds, and I'm like, I can't throw a turnover because I can't get my timing right. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just pull this arm completely out. And then I was able to throw a turnover, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go with that all week. And
it was. Did it feel awkward at all, or did you adjust? Did you feel like by the end of the tournament, like it felt fine?
It felt. I mean, the only awkwardness was like the first step or two.
That's what it looked like.
It looked where I had to keep it back instead of like keeping it.
It looked like by the time you got to where you were getting into the throw, it looked normal from there. That makes a lot of sense. And then so like in your normal form, are you kind of having that hit with your other arm like at the same time as you reach back more? Like it's just getting there early, you were finding?
Yeah, I think, it was just getting there a lot early, or it wasn't getting back enough to where it was getting out of the way. So I don't know. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to pull it out of the way, and I'm throwing my shots exactly how I want. And if anything, I felt way more accurate than I had all season.
Okay. So it's here to stay.
Well, yeah.
For now.
Yeah. until it doesn't work. Until it goes back, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing that has kind of seemed to change throughout the season, and this didn't really happen as much at Worlds, your putting changed a little bit at Worlds due to injury, going back and forth the straddle. But throughout the season, it seems like you've been tinkering with your putt a good bit. At least it seemed like that as a fan. Have you not been satisfied with your putting this year? Or are these changes really not that big of a deal and are just kind of things you've been tinkering with?
Well, inside the circle, I feel like it's been very solid, but I haven't been able to get like that circle 2 confidence like I have in circle 1. So I've been trying to figure out what's the best way to get them both on the same page. So I'm always like trying to figure it out. So it does look a little different or feel a little different, but usually as long as I'm not screwing up circle 1, then I'm going to keep trying to mix things up and figure it out how to work it best. And what's today, Wednesday or something? Yeah. Like I haven't touched a disc, thrown a disc. Like I'm just trying to recover, but I'm like eager to get back at it. So like today or tonight, I'll definitely start putting and see what my body wants as natural and go from there.
Yeah. You feel like it seems like with your putter, it's kind of just been like whatever you're feeling that day is what you're kind of rolling with. Because I've seen, some days you're changing the angle of the disc on the pullback. Sometimes you're bringing it back lower, more between your legs. So it's kind of for you just more of a feel situation. Would you say you're more of a feel-based player in general? It kind of seems like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever, as far as like even in like the tense moments, it's like whatever you feel is like going to be your best shot, like go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Go for it. Because you don't want to like try to talk yourself out of it, second guess yourself, and do all these other things and overthink everything. So I like the final round at Worlds. That was my thing, is like, all right, whatever your gut says, go with it. Like you've practiced all these shots. You know what to do in all these situations. Just trust your gut. Like you're not going to pick a shot that you can't throw and just like, this is what I'm going to do.
Right. Exactly. So your only real slip up during the event, you're playing solid throughout. You're staying right in the mix. But in the fourth round at Country Club, you're only able to shoot 6 under, and you gave yourself a bit of a deficit going into the last day. With Gossage playing like he was, how confident were you that you'd be able to catch him?
Well, I knew I had a shot because there's 18 holes and his best round's been a 10.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of holes that I can make strokes up on him. And weird to say, he went 10, 10, 10, 9. So he's like kind of trending downward in a sense of where he struggled to get to the 9. So I knew that there was a big opportunity. Even though I shot a 6, I feel like I made a lot of mistakes and didn't capitalize on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I saw his game plan there. And there were holes he wasn't really going for. There was like shots that he wasn't pushing. He was just kind of playing it safe and kind of not getting to the ideal landing zone on a lot of shots. So there was a lot of room for him to make mistakes. And just take in a mistake, I mean like take a par.
Yeah,
than like,
right.
He's not gonna go OB.
Par was a mistake out there.
Yeah, that was clearly obvious with his game plan. So, yeah.
And you mentioned that one of your strategies was to kind of throw his shot, make him see it, come out of your hand before he got a chance to throw it. Is that something that I thought was a very interesting strategy? And when you end up in a spot that you were in where, there were those early pushes from AB. Unfortunately, he fell short, but as the round got later, it certainly felt like match play. And kind of using that strategy, is that something you've ever really done before?
Well, yeah, you'll see it a lot in the sense of like when people play with people with bigger arms than them. For example, you mentioned AB.
Yeah.
People will try to throw outside their means.
Right.
And they'll try to match those players and they'll make mistakes. Same thing with like the term of, oh, you got big putted. Like, oh, we're both putting.
Yeah.
Someone hit a 40-footer, now you got a 20-footer and you missed yours.
Right.
You're like, I don't miss 20-footers because you just saw someone do it.
Exactly.
So I think similar to that, to where I took, his game plan on 5 where he goes forehand off the tee and he throws it to the safe spot. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw my shot. And if he's watching a little bit, he might adjust his a little bit because he saw the flight of mine, to where he was the only one throwing that shot before. So now he sees someone else do it. Now he might second guess himself.
Might
a little
think,
bit.
I could do it that way instead.
Yeah, or maybe I should. That's his flippy disc. Maybe I should go a little bit straighter disc, and he might push a little bit left. So there were instances like that. But then also on hole 10, like I saw him throw the zone. I was like, why didn't I never try that?
Yeah.
Like I know I'm not the best throwing the zone, but it's better than what I've been doing.
Right.
So I threw that, parked it, and then he made the mistake right after.
Yeah, true. That was one of the more key drives of that round for sure.
Yeah. So there's like little things like that to where. And he also had a great game plan on a lot of these holes.
Yeah.
So I saw like, okay, I don't want to lose a stroke here. I'm trying to think what hole I did it. For example, definitely 18. I threw a forehand, I think, because I saw his. And it was like, all right, it's guaranteed par.
Right.
To where I went out of bounds the day before. But yeah, just things like that.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go over some of the big shots towards the end of the round to kind of get into your head and, see what you were thinking in those moments, down the stretch. The first one is the OB drive on 15. It felt eerily similar to the OB shot you threw at European Open down the stretch where it kind of handed it to Eagle. Did any part of your mind, jump to that conclusion right after that throw, like, oh my goodness, I've just lost it for myself?
I didn't think I lost it because there was still 16, 17,
right.
18. To where if it was like hole 17, it would have been a little bit more difficult. But I just gave the wind too much credit on that hole to where I thought it was going to flip my disc up a lot more than it did. And that's why it hit the early tree is I just gave it way too much hyzer. Yeah. Power was right. I just gave it too much hyzer. And I was not expecting the raw. I thought I was just going to take a par. But that put me from up one to down one quick.
Definitely a tough place to adjust. So then you're going into 16 now. And obviously 16... more than it even was before, has now become the crucial hole here because now you're down a stroke. So you're looking for your chance to get back in the door. What better spot to do it than 16? Going into that, you kind of had a game plan on that hole, but was there any spot on that island that you would have laid up for? Or was your mindset, if I hit the island, I'm taking this in my own hands and I'm running it?
Are you talking about just the putt?
Just for the putt, yeah.
in that situation, down one, no, I'm running every time.
Yeah.
Whether he makes it, misses it, goes in the water, like I'm running that. Because
Yeah.
if he goes in the water, then I'm like, all right, I can take 2 strokes.
Right.
You know, I'm not thinking layup and we'll just go tie 17, you know.
Yeah.
So, so I was running it the whole time, and I knew he laid it up the day before, so he was already thinking about it.
Right.
Like he had already had that hole and that putt in his head before, and it was a headwind.
Yeah.
You know,
it was very tough. Yeah.
His putting style, that extreme nose down, it is gonna. You know, most people think headwind is going to lift, but when you have such a nose down style like he does, it
just goes
dives
down. Yeah.
to where he's standing at that putt, and if he wants to make it, he's got to put it above the band.
Right.
And like, when do you ever want to put above the band with water right behind
Yeah.
him? So it was a very difficult putt for him, and for me, you know, my putt's pretty flat neutral. It's not going to get affected too much. I might get a little lift, but
yeah.
But yeah, I was running that the whole time.
Yeah, and so that was, you know, the first of, and we'll get into it. There's a kind of a stretch of clutch putting in that event for you, but you know, you had like kind of the circles, because how far was the distance on that putt on 16? Was it just outside or
just inside?
Just inside. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the distance putt that you've been dealing with a lot in that event, yeah. Just inside or just outside the circle. You know, this one obviously you're staring down water, biggest, you know, putt of the tournament so far. You know you have a chance. For you, regardless of any struggles you've had putting from that distance during the event, when it gets to that moment where you know it's clutch time, it's winning time, is there something that kind of just takes over to where you know you're making that putt? Like that, there's just no other option.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, as bad as I putted, like I only missed, I think 2, maybe 3 inside the circle whole time.
Yeah.
You know, and 1 in that final round because I was behind that box. So it's like my putting was great in the circle.
Yeah.
So when I got in the circle, I was like, all right, this is good.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any doubt for that one. You know, obviously I want to take my time, not misread anything.
Right.
And but yeah, being in the circle, I pretty much was like, all right, I'm counting it.
Yeah.
So that moment I didn't have any fear of it.
You can definitely tell that was a very confident putting stroke, and it was in all the way for sure. So now to 17, this was even crazier because, you know, drive ends up in an unfortunate spot. You're looking down 510 feet, low ceiling, OB left and short. You know, Gossage is in a great spot. This was the shot of the tournament. You know, when you landed there and I saw you lining up, like getting aggressive, I was like, this is what's going to do it basically, because he's going to throw a shot that's very aggressive here. What were the options playing in your head? Was there only one choice there, or did you kind of mill over a few different options?
So, I mean, right off the tee, Calvin threw it into the ground.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get a read off that, and I threw it, you know, actually where I wanted, but the wind just lifted it, and then did the same to Matty right after. And then Calvin again threw first, and he threw OB. So I'm like, all right, like I've carried this OB before in other like GBOs or DDOs.
Yeah.
But when I was walking up to it, I was looking at, all right, if I go left, I can pitch it forehand and then just throw a hyzer and take my par. I can try to go big turnover over and push it way over.
Yeah.
And just to the right and maybe get a look. And then I looked over to the right and was like, if I just clear the OB, it's a guaranteed par. Mm-hmm. The other 2 ways, you know, I bring so much OB into play, I still have to throw another long shot. But if I clear this, it's a guaranteed par.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I was tied, and I didn't want to push it to 18 and be down 1.
Right.
You know, well, I should say, I wanted to at least put pressure on him to where he knew I was going to par.
Yeah, he had to do something.
So I looked over there under that low-hanging branch. Is like, all right, if I just give my force a little bit of turn, it's going to dip under the branch, and then it'll start to hyzer and lift back over that hill if I hit it perfect.
Yeah.
And I was able to execute that shot, and now I'm like, I got another skip off the ground over there, and I was like, all right, I might even have a look at it.
Right.
You know, to where I might be able to make this and push him, because I was already counting him for a birdie.
Yeah.
And then keep it within 1 going into 18. So once I nailed that shot, and then I think what happened with him is the day before, Calvin threw a hyzer, backhand hyzer, and it carried OB left. Mm-hmm. And I think that popped in his head to where he's like, I don't want to make that mistake. Like, right. I don't want to go OB, because then I'm definitely not gaining a stroke. If I go forehand, even if I saw it off, I'll still have an opportunity to gain 1.
Yeah.
But I don't think and it was a left to right at that time too. So I don't think he expected it to blow that far.
Yeah.
To the right. I think he was trying to put it circle's edge and go from there.
So so then you obviously, you've got the 69 footer. When you stepped up to that putt, you know, I'm sure at this point you kind of have that, in a shot like that, you kind of have that extra confidence of like, hey, I just wanted the par. So now this is bonus birdie opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a big putt situation essentially. Yep. Did that putt really fit your eye? Were you feeling very confident walking up to it?
I was, because I was actually thinking back to USDGC last year, the putt that I had to hit on 17.
Yeah, similar.
To push it. Yeah, so for the birdie. So I was thinking like this looks very similar distance-wise. And I was contemplating, do I need to jump it or not?
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, just get it in the air and let the disc carry there. Like just get it high enough and you'll have a chance. Because in warm-ups and practice and everything leading up to the tournament, I wasn't having an issue getting the disc that far from a standstill. I was having an issue getting the height. So I just told myself, all right, give it the height, give it the height. And as soon as it left my hand, I was like, that's high enough. Now just get there.
Just get left.
And I just followed it to the left. And then as soon as it stuck in the basket, I was like, all right, like I just stole one here, because I don't think he had made a circle 2 putt really all day or pretty much any rounds I really played with him.
Yeah.
At least from distance.
Right. Yeah. Well, his putting has certainly started to kind of falter in that last round. There were certainly a few cracks. I mean, he gave up one early in the round. That was kind of that early sign. So, yeah, I mean, you gave him almost the most impossible spot, because I believe he also had a headwind uphill. Yeah. So very tough spot for him. So moving on to 18, obviously there's a whole host of things that can happen, because the thing about 18 is no matter what, you're almost guaranteed, if you don't get it really close, a really scary putt looking at it out of bounds. Drives go down and you end up with Gossage throwing first. Did that bring a little bit of a smile to your face after what happened last year, knowing that at least Gossage had to go first, so you couldn't end up in a spot like you did with Conrad?
It definitely makes it easier with him going first. Yeah. And the reason why is because I knew he went with the hyzer, and earlier, I shouldn't say earlier, the day before he threw a zone and he left it pretty short. Yeah. And I don't think he made it. And it looked like it wanted to drift towards the OB a little bit more than it did. So when I didn't see him throw his nuke on it at all. So when he did throw the nuke and it just dug right next to the basket, for me, I knew, all right, at least if you par, we're going to a playoff. Right. Like, don't overshoot it, because you can't really see where the base of the basket is over the hill. Yeah, you don't want to give it too much air. Yeah, so when he put it right next to the basket, I said, all right, I can win this, but don't give it away. Yeah. So I threw my buzz almost where I wanted, but I thought I was going to get a little bit more lift off the lake and the wind, and it kind of just stayed low. So just going by the crowd's reaction, I knew it was going to be a putt, but I didn't know how far away it was. But yeah, it was definitely easier with him going first in that situation, because I think if I was up first, I probably would have put it closer, but I wouldn't have felt as comfortable, because I know if I carry past that basket at all, it's going to go OB. Yeah, certainly. It would definitely change things. So you ended up getting a putt for the win. It's a tough one, and I couldn't help but think it was very similar to the one you had at USDGC to win, where elevated basket, trouble behind, kind of just outside the circle, tough look. You left it short. I think you also left it just a little bit short at USDGC. You kind of had the tree branches. Yeah. So you're heading to a playoff again for Worlds, kind of not nearly the situation you were headed into a playoff last year. It wasn't nearly as, explosive, but where was your head at? The last playoff you had in a major, you won, it only took one hole, but then you had the history with Worlds last year, losing in that playoff. Was there any kind of loss of confidence knowing like, man, I shouldn't have let this get to the playoff? Or were you just thinking, yeah, we're going back to 16. I just birdied it last time. Like, I've got this. I mean, there's definitely the fear of like, you might lose this again. Yeah. And then going to an island hole on 16 was a little bit less intimidating than the one at Worlds last year, because kind of what happened. And then also you're throwing a driver on that one. This one, you're throwing a mid to a putter. And, Aaron hadn't thrown OB besides hole 1 at Jones, as far as I remember, or he might have one other one, but like he didn't have any bogeys, didn't have any of that. So I knew this is like in my head, like you got to put on the island, you have to put on the island. And I knew when he put on the island, he wasn't really running that putt. And when he did, he was missing it low. So I knew if I put on the island, I'd have the advantage there. And I know a lot of people were upset, like, oh, he landed on the island, but he was still OB. Like, I had that happen the day before. Yeah. Like, I was on the island, but barely OB. You can see the OB line. It's right there. And it's because, the lake was so much lower than normal. So, he left his a little bit shorter. And I feel like it was almost because he was trying to put it closer. Yeah. Instead of, like, playing it to the back wall like he had. It seemed like he was trying to put it a little bit closer. And unfortunately, it was a little short. And then, but the thing is, even when I made the island, it's not over. Like that drop zone's not far.
Well, and Big German just made one from the drop zone. They were just showing a highlight probably a half hour earlier, and I was like, "Hey guys, like this is not over at all." So you end up winning. You tap in for that title, and after what happened last year, did it almost just feel like redemption a little bit? Like you had it snatched from you at the last moment. It felt like out of your control to a sense. And, with just like that 1 in a million shot going in, really. And, you get it back the very next year. Did it almost feel like, wow, like almost like making things right for you, like getting that title that you thought you should have gotten last year?
It's definitely, I mean, it's almost a matching storyline with that. But I don't know if it goes so far as to back to like that. And like, I feel like I got this back. Because it was such an insane battle for this one. Because I feel like it was so different battling with Aaron than it was like that battle last year. Mm-hmm. Like it literally felt like just Aaron and I the whole time in the final round. Because,
very match play.
Because he wasn't going to give anything away.
Yeah,
he might miss some putts and stuff like that. But that's just Aaron's game. Like he's getting there all the time. And that's like his, that's his weak point, I guess, is putting. But he was putting so good leading up to that. So, yeah, I mean, it felt great, but I think just kind of like I've been telling myself all year, like, win worlds. This is that turning point in the season that you've been looking for and that you've been wanting because nobody's taking control of this year.
Yeah.
Like there's not a single, Simon has 3, Ricky has 3, Calvin's been playing well. Like nobody's taking control this year. And, it's that, it's not over till it's over kind of year for me.
Absolutely.
So, after this, I got 4 more events, but, I'm still looking forward to what I got coming up, but it's just, I don't know. It felt great to win that. It was an emotional one because I feel like I've put so much into winning this one, especially this year.
Yeah. Well, and as I was going to ask is like, how is it preparing for the rest of the season after such a big win, especially now where Worlds is placed on the calendar? And I mean, you'll look up in a month and it'll be USDGC, How is it like resetting, like, okay, now it's time to go back out? And because like every event from here on out, other than like, there's the Silver Series and we got playoffs, USDGC Tour Championship. Yeah. How is it getting your mind resetted for that?
I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to just going out, playing these 4, hopefully winning all 4, and then just like being like, dang, do you guys remember that year that Paul had in 2022? Like,
and well, it's true. One win at Worlds, we were talking about it on Grip Block. It changed the narrative so fast when you win a major these days, because like you were saying, all of a sudden, well, now you've got a pro tour and a major. There's not many that have had any kind of season like that. Yeah. And you grab the last major. Well, now, 2 out of 4 majors is always going to be a dominant season.
Yeah. And I think right now too, I might be the only one with all my 3 majors in the top 10. So.
Yeah, I'd have to fact check it, but it's certainly elite company for sure. So last thing I wanted to ask, since this title, I feel like any titles, as you get further into your career, they almost get more special because they, with the field being as difficult as this year, overcoming adversity throughout the season and getting these titles, they're so big. But let's get a ranking in like how special and meaningful they were for all of your world titles, all 6 of them.
Oh, I have to put them in order.
Yeah, put them in. You don't have to put, if some of them all are bunched in. You can just say which are the most meaningful ones, or they can all be tied for one.
I'll just go. I'll start at 6. I think Crown Point. So that would be the second one.
Yeah,
it's probably the lowest. 'Cause I think it just seems so quick.
Yeah,
one after the other. And then I think the playoff with Ricky is probably 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Portland one. And then, which one? Charlotte was 2015?
Charlotte was 2012.
Oh, 2012. So that one's
2015 was Pittsburgh.
Okay, so Pittsburgh. Yeah, Pittsburgh's probably number 4 because it was a big
won
year.
So many titles, he doesn't even know where they were. That's amazing.
It was a big year. 2012. So my first one's probably 3. 2019 2, and then this one is probably 1.
This is 1.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's 2019. Was that special just because that was the first one with Discraft?
First one with Discraft, and so first one with Discraft, it was a big year. Like that year gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Like that year was like I feel like I almost won everything that year.
It was certainly a good year.
And I think the only thing that kind of threw it off is my finish at USDGC.
Yeah.
And then, so with Discraft, like I won 19, we didn't have 20. I lost in the playoff in 2021 and now 2022. So I don't know, Discraft and majors, they go together right now.
Hey, it's
the
true.
Worlds, Discraft and Worlds.
It's true. I did a trivia question for our podcast on Monday. It was, but part of it was that you are only 21 strokes separated from 10 world titles. That's how many strokes.
Well, because Ricky won them by a lot.
Right. And then, Ricky is in second. He's separated by 10 world titles by 66 strokes. So that's the difference there.
Round.
Yeah. So 21 strokes, that's all the difference. But that's all I've got for you, Paul. Congrats again on that 6th world title. And thanks for coming over for the interview.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.